What is up, guys? Delboy here. Just a quick post-fight thoughts video for Billy Joe Saunders versus David Lemieux. Now, I feel the word schooling is used a little too often in boxing. It's used a little too readily. But this fight was a schooling. Billy Joe took David Lemieux to gypsy boxing school. That's all there is to it. To me, this fight was never really competitive. Billy Joe Saunders was never in any danger throughout this fight, and he did exactly what he wanted to do. He said before the fight he would school this guy, and he said before the fight that the bigger the atmosphere, the bigger the fight, the better he's going to perform, and he lived up to that. This was definitely Billy Joe Saunders' best performance of his career so far, and I stayed up to watch this fight. It took place about, what, 4:30 in the morning over here, and it was worth staying up for. I thought it was a beautiful display of boxing, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching it. I mean, from the very first round, you know, Billy Joe's footwork and his movement was troubling Lemieux, like we all thought it would. I think most people thought that Billy Joe's movement would give Lemieux trouble, especially in the early rounds. So in the early rounds, that's what he was doing. He was moving, he was evading Lemieux's sort of charges, and he was popping out a right southpaw jab, catching Lemieux with like a flicking jab. When the left hand was available, Billy Joe would take a quick left hand down a pipe and catch Lemieux with it. So the right jab and the left hand were pretty much working from the first bell, and that was Billy Joe Saunders' bread and butter, keeping it at range, popping that jab, looking for that left hand down the pipe, and he was judging the distance very effectively. When David Lemieux did get somewhat close, he could spin David Lemieux and make David Lemieux reset. And that's one of the key factors in this fight. When you're fighting somebody like David Lemieux, a guy who needs to sort of plant his feet to get his power punches off, the key is, or one of the keys is, just basically keep making him reset. Don't let him sort of pin you against the ropes and plant his feet and let his hands go. And that's what Billy Joe Saunders did. Like I said, he was constantly spinning David Lemieux. He was jumping in and out of range. He was bouncing on his feet. Billy Joe mentioned that he watched Manny Pacquiao versus Antonio Margarito before this fight. He was watching it in a dressing room, and he said that he tried to kind of like emulate Pacquiao's in and out footwork, so bouncing on his feet, going in and out, taking the shots when they was available, kind of thing. And he didn't sort of emulate it to a mirror image kind of thing, but you could tell that that was a style he was kind of going for, you know. Just keep light on his feet, keep on making Lemieux reset, and keep on making Lemieux guess and second guess himself, and then just pop him with that jab, look for that left down the pipe. You could tell that's the game plan he was going for. And the Pacquiao-Margarito fight was actually a good fight to study going into this fight. It was a good fight to look at, because like David Lemieux, they are different fighters, but Margarito, he needs to set his feet to punch, and Pacquiao's constant movement in and out, bouncing on his feet, changing sort of directions in which he was going, changing the punch angle, feinting, that gave Margarito fits. And Billy Joe replicated that against David Lemieux. He replicated it in his own way, but it was the same result. Billy Joe's feinting was also on point, you know, constantly, you know, not allowing David Lemieux to even get in punching range and let his hands go. Listen, I can describe what he was doing, but it was essentially just a schooling. You know, you had one guy in David Lemieux who is a come-forward guy. He's got a lot of power. He can apply good pressure at times. But when you put him in there with a semi-decent boxer, his limitations are going to get exposed. When you put him in there with a world-class boxer, he's going to be exposed. And he was totally exposed against Billy Joe Saunders. And I have to say, I picked Billy Joe to win this fight. However, I thought we would get some rocky moments. I thought there would be moments and rounds where Lemieux comes off a better. I thought there would be times when Billy Joe's against the ropes, taking big shots to the body, even if he was blocking and rolling some of them. Just by basis of it being in Canada, those rounds would have gone to David Lemieux. I thought we was going to get that type of fight. I thought we was going to get a really closely contested fight. I thought Billy Joe would really build up a big lead and then he'd fade, like he has in the rest of his career. But the fade never happened. You know, Billy Joe Saunders has a history in his career of gassing in fights. You know, we saw that against Eubank Jr. We saw that against Nick Blackwell. We saw that against Andy Lee. We saw that against Arthur Akavov. You know, it's been a constant theme throughout Billy Joe's career, and it's always been a question mark that's been above his head. How good is his conditioning? And going to Dominic Ingle, he seems like he's got a trainer who's going to take no nonsense, and he has got Billy Joe in the best shape of his career. He fought Willie Monroe back in September. They obviously had a big camp for that fight. They got Billy Joe down to good shape to fight Willie Monroe Jr. After that fight, they pretty much went straight into this fight. So they had 2 camps back to back. And I think that's the key with Billy Joe Saunders. You need to keep him in the gym. You need to keep him fit. And that's what Dominic Ingle's trying to do. You know, he's trying to keep him active. With Saunders, that is vital. Because we saw what happened when Billy Joe had a long time out of the ring. He put on a lot of weight. He was actually severely overweight. And, you know, he had to spend the whole camp losing weight for Arthur Akavov. And he looked terrible in that fight. You know, now he's actually in shape. He can go in camp and work on his boxing. He can go in camp and work on his opponents and what he's going to do. So that is... The shape he's in is tremendous, and it's resulting for better performances, obviously. And his gas tank last night was as good as I've ever seen it. And you can argue, well, Lemieux wasn't really pressuring him. I disagree, because Lemieux is still coming forward. Billy Joe still had to constantly move, you know. He still had to let his hands go. He still had the thought in the back of his mind that if I slow down at any minute, this guy could catch me. So he had to be on his P's and Q's. And I wonder whether the old Billy Joe Saunders of a couple of years ago would have won this fight in quite a convincing fashion. I don't think he would have. I think this Billy Joe Saunders gas tank has improved, just because he's eating better, he's training more, you know. He's actually got a dietitian. I mean, we heard rumours about Billy Joe Saunders earlier on in his career, about him liking to party and you know, enjoy the good things in life, shall we say. Even in the Eubank Jr. fight, apparently he only had a 6-week camp for that fight. You know, because of certain things. So, listen, we could potentially be getting the very best version of Billy Joe Saunders. And I've always wondered to myself how good that guy could be. Like I said, I've never doubted his skills and talent. I basically doubted his dedication to boxing and his mindset, you know, things like that, his conditioning. That's what I doubted. And I always felt that would hold him back. And I always felt that would basically not let us see the best version of Billy Joe Saunders. Hopefully that's all ironed out. I want to see the best version of this guy, and what I saw last night was exceptional. So, I want to see Billy Joe stay active. I really want to see this guy keep fighting, because I thoroughly enjoyed that performance. I was looking at a Frank Warren interview, his promoter, and he said he wants to get Billy Joe back in the ring in the springtime. Apparently, according to Frank Warren, the Canelo vs Golovkin rematch will happen, and we're only a week or two away for an announcement. So maybe Frank's got a bit of inside info there. Hopefully Frank's right. Hopefully that rematch gets made. But apparently that rematch is going to happen. Obviously, if it does get made, it's going to happen in May next year. So Billy Joe needs to stay active. He needs to fight in March or April. And Frank said he wants to get him out. Who does Billy Joe fight in the meantime? Because Billy Joe Saunders has sort of set his mind on the winner of Golovkin versus Canelo. And I'll talk about that in a bit. But who does Billy Joe fight in March? There's a few names. I don't think you're going to get a really big name opponent. As much as I'd like somebody like Demetrius Andrade or Danny Jacobs, that'd be great, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Billy Joe's going to fight somebody in March or April who's decent but not like a big threat, and he'll go into that fight with Canelo or Golovkin. That's what I think he's going to do. I think somebody like Martin Murray would suffice. Martin Murray will take your rounds, he'll try his hardest, but he's there to be outboxed by Billy Joe Saunders. I could see somebody like Martin Murray getting the call to fight Billy Joe Saunders in March or April. I think that'd be ideal to lead into that fight, actually. Obviously, I would rather somebody like Danny Jacobs or, like I said, Demetrius Andrade, because I think Andrade is very beatable at 160. I think Saunders could beat him. I think that'd be a good name on the resume. You know, an unbeaten guy. That'd be good. But I think somebody below that level is more realistic. I don't think Frank Warren would want to jeopardise a Canelo fight or a Golovkin fight, because he can put Billy Joe versus Canelo or Golovkin on pay-per-view on BT or Box Nation. So, listen, he's not going to jeopardise that. So, the March-April opponent, I just think he's going to be like a stay busy type fight, like a Martin Murray. I've not checked the rankings, but I think it's going to be somebody like that, like Martin Murray. I would have said Spike O'Sullivan, but obviously Billy Joe's already fought him, you know. But along those lines, does Billy Joe Saunders give Canelo and Golovkin problems? Let's start with Canelo Alvarez. Stylistically, I think Billy Joe Saunders will give Canelo Alvarez fits. We saw what the southpaw Erislandy Lara did to Canelo Alvarez. In my opinion, Lara beat Alvarez. You know, he constantly had Alvarez befuddled by the movement. Yes, it was excessive at times, but regardless, Alvarez can't cut the ring off. That is for damn sure. He cannot cut the ring off. He had big trouble with Lara, and Lara was countering well with that southpaw lead. You know, the left hand down the pipe, and he was countering at will at times. You know, the jab left hand was also working. The right hook was working. Lara was actually piecing Canelo up at times. I really felt Lara won that fight, but obviously Canelo got the decision. But it highlighted the weaknesses of Canelo Alvarez. When you make him attack, he's very one-paced. You know, Canelo Alvarez, he likes a pressure fighter coming at him, you know, who's going to come forward and offer some target. And that's when Canelo looks good. To me, Canelo is not a come-forward fighter. When he's made to lead, he looks beatable. He looks very beatable. When you make Alvarez lead, to me, it's totally against his style. And Billy Joe's not going to come forward and meet Canelo in the ring, in the centre of the ring. That's just not going to happen. You know? I think Billy Joe's movement is going to befuddle Canelo in a lot of rounds. The constant southpaw jab of Billy Joe Saunders is going to give Alvarez issues. That's one big difference between Lara and Saunders. Saunders, to me, is more active, so he'll let that jab go a bit more often, you know. Even if it's a soft jab, he'll let it go. It's something, it's landing. And that is one of the reasons why Lara never got the decision. To me, he still won it, but he wasn't, like, active enough at times. And Saunders is pretty active, you know. Like I said, he'll consistently throw that jab. He looks for nice counters when they can be landed. To me, the work rate of Saunders is a little bit better than Lara's. And if you tie that in with the movement of Saunders, I think Alvarez has a very, 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 very tough fight there. I really do. Whether Saunders gets a decision or not is another matter. But stylistically, Billy Joe is wrong for Alvarez. I'm not saying he's going to beat Alvarez, but what I'm saying is it's going to be a damn tough fight. A damn tough fight. I think Saunders has a great chance against Alvarez. I really do. As for Golovkin, again, I make Golovkin a favourite. Did Saunders look good against Lemieux? Yes, but let's get it straight. And I'm not taking credit away from Saunders. Lemieux can't cut the ring off. He can't. You know, he doesn't sort of move side to side. He doesn't move his head. He doesn't take a step to the right or the left, whatever way he has to go. He doesn't jab his way in. You know, he doesn't really vary his punches. He is a terrible pressure fighter. He is just a slugger. Gennady Golovkin has some of the best footwork in terms of offense in boxing. He cuts the ring off very well. You know, he uses techniques such as shifting. Look it up. He does take a step to his right or his left. He does jab his way in, you know. He's more versatile than most pressure fighters. And the pressure that Golovkin brings is on another level to the pressure that Lemieux brings. So I think that's going to be a tough fight because it's going to take a lot of movement for Billy Joe to keep away from Golovkin. I think he'll give Golovkin problems just based on his slick style and his counter punching. He's going to find Golovkin. He's going to time him at times, and he will win rounds against Golovkin. But it's whether he can sort of hold Golovkin off for 12 rounds because he's damn sure not stopping him. So to me, the Golovkin fight is tough. I make Golovkin a big favourite. I make him like a 60-40 favourite. Sorry, but I still think Billy Joe can give Golovkin a lot of trouble. Not only that, Golovkin could be slipping. You know? I mean, Danny Jacobs came close to beating him. I personally felt Golovkin just about nicked it, but the Danny Jacobs fight was close. And to me, for my money, Billy Joe's a better boxer than Danny Jacobs. He's got more skills. He's slicker. He's got a better defense than Danny Jacobs. I think Golovkin's a favourite, and rightly so, but Saunders is a worthy challenger for Golovkin, and he has a shot. He really does. But yeah, credit to Billy Joe Saunders. He's really put himself in a good position for 2018. Big money fights with Alvarez and Golovkin, either or, whoever wins. Not only that, the Eubank Jr. fight, the rematch, that could still be out there. Let's say Eubank Jr. wins the World Boxing Super Series. Could they meet in the middle for a rematch? Would Chris Eubank Jr. come back down? Would Billy Joe go to 168? Because Chris Eubank Jr., he's not the biggest super middleweight. Would Billy Joe entertain a rematch at 168 if Chris Eubank Jr. won the whole Super Series? That would be a massive fight in the UK, providing Eubank Jr. won it. So Billy Joe has options for 2018. The Danny Jacobs fight is there. I'm sure if that was in New York, that would do some good numbers. It would generate good money. You know, he's got options. So yeah, I'm pleased for Billy Joe. I'm pleased that he's finally getting recognised for the talent he is, because I feel a lot of guys over the pond just viewed him as trash. I understood their grievances with him in terms of some of the things he said, but I mean, not to recognise this guy's skills was a bit silly. I think this guy's talent has always been there, just everything else hasn't. And now he's finally getting that together. We could be seeing the very best version of Billy Joe Saunders, and I for one am excited at that prospect. What do you guys think about Billy Joe Saunders? Where does he go from here? What did you think of his performance? Peace, and I apologise for the cold.